Hi, I'm Lisa Singer. I am the Deputy Editorial Director at MediaPost, and this is Brand Insider BTS, where I get to pull back the curtain on some of the most influential women marketers. And with me today is Maggie Miller. She is the Senior Director of Omnichannel Marketing at Delta Faucet. Hey, Maggie, welcome.
Lisa, thank you. Thanks so
I'm
much
so
for having me. What a prestigious group to be a part of.
Yeah, no, I mean, you guys, it's so funny, we've met each other at conferences that MediaPost does, and it's like usually talking strategy, and then I get to talk with you guys a little bit just about what you've been doing and your lives, and I'm like, that's what's inspired this show because you guys are so amazing. So I'm really glad we were able to do this, and I also want to add to this, congratulations on the promotion. Talk about that, and so now it's with your it's basically the omni-channel side of Delta Faucet. Talk about that a little bit and what it means to get this promotion for you.
Thank you. Really exciting. It's kind of one of those promotions you don't apply for, but is a result of where the organization is headed and just a great opportunity and great fit that I got to be promoted into as we reorganized our team. So I've like a lot of brands as we created our e-commerce team several years ago. We found ourselves in a position in 2022 where we felt like it was really the right time to merge together our e-commerce and our brick and mortar team into one full like commercial team that's responsible for the P&L with our retailers as well as our media, advertising, merchandising, and analytics. And so in doing that, my new role looks over the really full marketing strategy with all of our top retail customers across brick and mortar and online. So our team is responsible for what items we're selling into the aisle and how we merchandise them, how we launch them, how we invest in our advertising to make them successful, and really how we're leaning into our advanced analytics capability to do that even more precisely.
Wow, that's awesome. And I love that because you kept teasing it to me. You're like, I have some big news, I have some big news, and you were holding, I'm like, what is it? And but as you said, you didn't even look for it. It was something that just sort of came your way. I mean, but obviously after years of working and putting all of it in there. But so talk about that. I mean, for people who are within an industry or within having a company, working for a company, and then you just do your due diligence and then some, and then things like this can happen. So talk about that kind of thing as opposed to the times when you've maybe gone after what you're looking for and how that maybe differentiates.
Um, I think I got into this role within Delta Faucet Company and joined this organization like at the perfect right time. I think that like a lot of people, when you think about success, what it looks like in growing in an organization, I think it's a culmination of two things, like one, the hard work and capability you put in, but also sometimes it's a little bit of luck. And I think I lucked out. And when I joined the team is really when we founded e-commerce. And so I say that with luck and that like got to get in at the floor and really build and grow those e-commerce capabilities over the last 7 years. And so as we've had to invest more and more in that e-commerce strategy, that positioned me well to be able to grow the team and the organization. Um, and where that led us, I think in the last 6 months was when I knew some things before other people knew things about where our organization was headed, is we know those digital capabilities are absolutely critical in how we go to market with our channel partners as well as our consumers. And so I think I fortunately was in a good position to be bringing that capability and skill set from leading our e-commerce marketing team to once we merged the two across brick and mortar and in store, to really be able to bring that mindset and background to how we're going to approach like our full channel strategy.
Yeah, no, and I mean, I realize things, obviously stars have to align. And I think that's with everyone in whatever industry they're in. But I also think you're being modest because I've seen you work, I've seen your presentations, I know what you do. So
Exactly.
obviously, you're doing something right to get there. But
Yeah, I
anyway,
appreciate
I
that.
want to sort of go off a little bit in terms of, I know that earlier in your career, you worked for a marketing agency called Trendy Minds. So I wanted to ask you, because their motto sort of is improving lives with boundary pushing. So I want to ask you, outside of what you do with work, what kind of boundary pushing have you done maybe to improve yourself, your life, your, whatever things are going on? Is there anything that you really know that you sit there back and say, okay, I really extended myself here?
You asked me that like outside of work, and I'm thinking about it. Um, and I almost came up with like a very ironic answer, and that I think I might be boundary pushing and setting boundaries. And and I think that's a conversation that's really important for a lot of people right now, and that you really have to protect your time and prioritize what's most important to you and make time for the things that are. And that often looks like setting boundaries in terms of saying no to things and saying no to timelines, and really, I think, like cultivating the use of your time around like what's the highest priority for you. So I think about like, well, boundary pushing. Wow, am I pushing boundaries and setting boundaries? Is that is that a ridiculous answer to think about
No. I
what
mean,
that
I
looks
think
like?
it seems like you live your life kind of that way in terms of what you want to do, what's important, you put the value there, and maybe that's where you push some boundaries or you extend yourself a little bit more. So maybe it's just not that one thing. Sometimes people have a certain time when they just like, as I said, kind of push the boundaries. But I think it's really says a lot about you that you're someone who kind of keeps that idea in your lifestyle all the time, whether it's for work
Yeah,
or for family or for personal, whatever it may be. And because I think women especially don't always find it easy to say no or say they can't, whether it be to meet someone out for dinner or whether, to, like you said, push that deadline. Like, okay, I'll get it for you then. Almost, it's hard. No is hard sometimes. So I think that you have that ability. I think that says a lot. I mean, is that something you have always had, or do you feel like you've developed it as you've experienced these kind of situations where, all right, you're spreading yourself too thin?
yeah, I think it's probably something I've developed more recently. Um, I think we all like kind of took a while and reflected during the pandemic, but also during the pandemic, I had my first child. And so, of course, that just changes everything for you. And there's a lot more demands on your time. And I think once you get into a certain position of leadership or influence or like level of network, there's just a lot more asks of you. And if you're not very intentional and very protective of how you invest your time, that'll get taken away from you or pushed the ways that don't align with like what you actually want to do or accomplish, whether that's time with your family or in your community or in your church or focusing on your career. I think you have to be the one that's really setting that agenda and prioritizing and making those tough decisions.
Yeah, no, it's smart because sometimes, as I've been in that situation where I spread myself too thin, and then I'm not doing anything any good.
Yeah, yeah. And I think like that also makes you a better leader. And that one, you can like embody that for your people that you're supporting, and like really live into that and show them what that means and looks like, and helps them create that boundary in their life. And I think makes those two members actually have a more I don't know, like less risk of burnout, and that they're creating that balance in their life, and I think makes them like want to work for you longer. But also like makes you a better leader, and that like, you're stronger and more focused in what you're doing by applying that. I feel like I'm talking a big game here, but it's really hard. I think if you go out and like
Especially
look at
with
all
the
the things that
baby,
you have to do, it's really hard.
especially with the new baby. I mean, that must be. I mean, That's awesome. Congratulations. And
Thank
I
you.
don't think we talked about it. I did see you since the pandemic, but I don't think we mentioned this. So tell me again, congrats. And how has that experience been and aligning it with a new baby, new promotion, new responsibilities?
Yeah, it's a lot. I think so. My daughter was born in October of 2020. So, really, like the very first part of her life, we were all still pretty shut down and isolated. Um, and in a lot of ways, like that made for a easier transition because there weren't as many demands for travel or social outings or things like that. So then, like, figuring out what that balance looks like in this new world didn't come until a little bit later in her life, which is kind of good because she's older and a little bit over some of those like harder months.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we all know it's kind of life changing and just just such a wonderful, I think, change of focus and perspective for our family.
That's awesome. Well, that is so wonderful to hear. I love that. Well, I know we sort of, I'm going to keep on the trendy thing. Working for Trendy Minds, years ago. I want to ask you about trends that maybe that are happening today or have happened in the last, couple of years, although with COVID, things have been all out of whack, but just any trends that were so popular that you were just like, you didn't get it. Like you wanted no part of it.
Gosh, like what kind of trends are you thinking about? I think there's
It
trends
could
could be a
be
lot.
a TV show, like people are streaming. It could be a certain style that people are wearing.
One that came to mind for me right away was seltzers. I don't like them. They just don't make me feel good. I don't even think they taste good. And they're like the number one most popular, fastest growing alcoholic beverage, seltzers.
I agree with that. I don't like fizzy. So like, I always have, you know, plain water, no sparkles, no fizz, no, so I
Oh,
would
see,
agree.
I like sparkling water, but not seltzers.
Yep. Well, seltzers is also, it's kind of adding, I mean, and I don't know about all of them, so I'm sure, don't tell me they were good, but it's adding sugar to your water kind of thing. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, it's less and it's a juice. So, and again, I don't know, there's probably some out there that have no sugar added, but it's just, but for me, it's just all about the fizz. I don't like fizz. So, all right. How about a trend that you have been very excited about and jump right on board?
Um, hmm, very broad, but I think it is so important. And anything to do with sustainability and the future of how either you personally or our corporations are thinking about just investing in the future of what it looks like to be protecting the environment and addressing the climate change situation. I think that's like so critical. And I don't know that I can call it a trend, but you certainly are able to see um, different people and different companies coming up with their strategy for addressing that. And that's something that's really important to me. And I think it like really resonated even more in the last 6 months or so with the challenges we're seeing and actually having a child that you're thinking about their future and the world they're going to live in. But I don't even think it's a trend. It's just like something I'm definitely excited about when I
It
see
is.
progress.
I think it's hopefully a trend that will stay, but I don't necessarily. It's people have had these type of goals and been working towards it, and but then when it becomes something that's more in the like that you're hearing more about it, I think then it can be considered a trend. But hopefully, this is one that will. If it's a trend, then that's what's getting people to start doing it. Then that's great, and
Yeah.
then it sticks, and everyone extends it. Let's have it be the longest running trend ever. And that's
Yeah, because it's going to have to be a monumental change in order to make an impact.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I do think it's wonderful that so many companies are jumping on board with trying to, with just even, research I do on different brands and how they're making their boxes or their packaging. So it's now more, sustainable in terms of, whether it be from the product it's made out of or just not even packaging or doubling it up, or, I mean, again, I don't know a lot of specifics about all this, but even clothing and how people are recycling clothing to make others. And so just,
I
you just, when you
think that's such a challenge for all of us, like personally. If you take the fast fashion trends, like there's a huge impact on the environment. So how do you like balance those with the choices you're making and where you're voting with your dollar?
Yeah. No, and I think that what puts people off, or not off, but maybe they don't, it's overwhelming to think I got to do it with everything. I have to worry about this and that. But I think it's more just doing these little changes within our life. If everyone does that, then that's going to give an impact. So it's I think sometimes people think, oh, well, I do this and that, and so what is that going to matter? But even those little things, like, one of the first things I did was stop leaving the water running when I brush my teeth. Like, I mean, it was very simple.
Ah, there you go.
Years ago, but it was like, that made so much sense. I saw someone talk about it, and it was just like, and then obviously this, it's built from there with other things. But I think
Exactly.
those
Small
little
things
steps-
add up.
Yes, very much.
I
But I
do.
want to get back a little bit to your career in terms of when you first started your career. It started on in a hospital side, and then, as I mentioned, Trendy Minds on the marketing agency, and now here you are, Delta Faucet, the brand. So talk about that when you first were starting your career. What were you envisioning for it and then how did it sort of evolve? Like, talk about those steps that got you to where you are right now.
I think, like a lot of people, I say this still today, like you just don't know where your career is going to take you. And I still think that's true now when I talk about like where I envision my future, what goals are, is I kind of like to plan for the next, like be prepared for that next position, but I don't think we have any idea what those next roles are that are going to exist. I think the last like 4 or 5 positions I've held didn't exist before. I think it's tough to like stand at the front of your career, even in front of like 5 to 10 years, and plan what that's going to look like. And so I really think about it as like positioning you well with the right experiences and development to be ready to take that next step. You may not know what it's going to be because it doesn't exist right now. Which is certainly what happened, I think, along the journey that got me to this role today. I started out in journalism school and really wanted to be more on the media side, had a couple of good experiences, I think, that showed me early in my like college career that probably wasn't the path I wanted to like fully invest in, which got me more focused on like the marketing and PR side. And just early on, like when I was in college, I was always so interested in the digital side of that and how that was transforming things. Even when some of our courses were still talking like traditional back then, I was always seeking out like what were those drivers and things that were really disrupting how we were using marketing and communications at that time. And so I got to have a small stint at hospital communications, which I was just so passionate about and what their mission is. And it led me over to the agency side, who had a major healthcare client. And that's where I was at Trendy Minds for quite some time. And during that period, working in an agency is just like such a wonderful experience for a marketer. One, you get to work on like a breadth of brands and companies and understand many different business models and strategies and like go-to-market approaches. And being most agencies operate this way, but being one that was more full service, got to have the experience of like working on lots of different types of marketing execution, from website development to Google campaign creation to video production to email strategy. So you got just like a well-rounded breadth of experiences. I just found that time that I was there so valuable. And this is where I think I really lucked out in finding the position I did at Delta Faucet Company at that time that was then very focused on the digital merchandising strategy that we were launching with our e-commerce capability. And so got to join Delta at the ground floor when we actually built some e-commerce strategy and capability. And we're like one of those first few people to join the team, and have really been able to grow that capability team and start what I really see as like transforming that organization over those last 7 years. And I think that's really a result of course, work I've done, but also the need and investment in how important that digital and e-commerce capability is.
Yeah, and I think it's funny when you say, when you don't think of Delta Faucet as starting on the ground floor or almost like a startup, like you can go into a huge organization and still be in that cutting edge kind of thing, starting something new. And I don't think a lot of people starting out realize that, but there are opportunities, within larger agents, larger companies.
Yeah, 100%. Like the great thing about Delta is we are a pretty old organization. And so this is a challenge I think that many brands face. Like we've grown up in more of the brick and mortar or traditional wholesale go-to-market strategy, and really have had to work to build what it means to think digital first and what e-commerce capabilities look like, and build out retail media capabilities and performance marketing capabilities that my team's in charge of. And so absolutely, like even though organizations are older, they need to develop and bring all of these capabilities into their wheelhouse. And it's just such a great opportunity to take like a skill set you're passionate about or an area you're passionate about and build that within the team. And I think really have an opportunity to drive something new and drive change.
Yeah, no, and I almost think it's more of a challenge in some ways because you do have that legacy brand where you have to you have an image, you can't necessarily, there's a lot more red tape or, you need more people signing off on things as opposed to a brand new company with 6 people who work there. You kind of just go, so
Yeah.
I think that there's a balance one way or the other. They each have their own challenges.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. That's the beauty of the world we live in. That can be a wonderful thing, but it's also a challenging thing as well.
Yeah. Well, speaking of challenges, have you had a challenge or face something where something happened and you thought it was horrible? It was one of the worst things, but ultimately it was sort of the best thing that could have happened. What's your silver lining?
I feel like these happen all of the time. I feel like that's when you really like learn the most and have the most growth. It's kind of when you have like a setback or like you didn't do as well as you wanted. So it's like almost hard to choose, right? It happens all the time. One I was thinking about was there was a time period where many of the leaders I had built a really strong relationship with and was my manager I'd really grown with and had helped advocate for me and help me grow and develop. I moved on to like their next promotion or role within the organization, which left their position open. And I wasn't ready to fill those shoes yet. And so I think what like made it a setback is that I had applied for that role, didn't get it. And that was the setback. But like the silver lining was whenever that manager that I've grown so close with and leader had moved on to the new role, suddenly like that forced me to step up and have to take on those capabilities and take on that decision making and a larger leadership role that you're like forced at that point to actually start to like prepare yourself to be ready for that position. if you've got such a strong leader ahead of you that not saying they weren't giving you the opportunity, but you're just not forced to have to stretch yourself into those tougher decision making positions. And I remember thinking like how hard it was for like that person to have moved on and to not be able to step into that role right away. But I certainly found that like having that space actually forced me to have to push myself further because I needed to step up into that role.
It sounds like you surprised yourself a little bit in the sense of when you did step up, you were able to do it. I mean, was that the case?
Mhm. Yeah. And I think when it happens to you, like surprisingly, whether it's maybe a maternity leave or it's someone moving into a new role or a reorg, um, you don't know if that's like it's kind of that philosophy of do you hire for someone to put them in the role like when you're 100% sure they can do it, or do you stretch them and hire them when you think like they can probably grow and stretch into the position? And so
Bring a
I
new
think,
energy.
yeah, I think it's that experience of being forced to have the opportunity to actually um, lean into that and do it, which I think builds your confidence and capability to see that that really is a role that you can lead in.
Yeah, I agree. I think sometimes we do surprise ourselves, or sometimes we sink. But you know what? At least you had the opportunity to try.
Yeah.
I think that
Sometimes we definitely think.
yes, you can, and it may seem horrible at the time, but you move on to whatever the next thing is. So, I want to ask you because as and now, I mean, within a company like Delta Faucet, obviously a legacy brand, but also your position now at a more senior level. We see a lot more, especially since the last few years, but we're seeing a lot more where brands are taking a stance, which they're whatever the subject may be, they're speaking for people. Whether against black with for Black Lives Matters, or with Asian descent, what they've been dealing with, and standing up there, environmental things, in terms of making sure people are more sustainable. Like all of these topics are so top of mind now, and sometimes brands feel like they want to sort of not put too much forward, and some then do. You see, the different brands that are doing both. What do you think the responsibility is of someone like in your position, or a brand that has that voice, has that megaphone, to then sort of back or speak for people who can't, who aren't heard?
I alluded to this earlier at the beginning of the interview when you're talking about trends, but I think about it maybe not so much about I think about the voice they're going to play secondary or later, and I think about whether or not like this is something they need to actually take action on. And I 100% believe brands do need to take action. And whether or not that becomes a voice and a message you put into marketing or your recruiting strategy, that's probably a secondary question. But I 100% believe brands have to take, and I say brands as in like organizations have to take a stance on taking action on those spaces, because the reality is like in a lot of ways they're the ones that are executing or like proliferating or causing some of these situations. And so the only way you'll have progress is if organizations are leaning in and saying they are going to make a change. And so I think it really starts with driving that change like authentically within the practices of the organization and in the leaders in that organization. That is really a strategy that you're executing. And then let's talk about if that's going to be a message and a voice that we kind of out and take a stance on externally.
Well, and I think I agree with what you're saying in the sense that just you can back certain causes, you can support certain causes, but not necessarily, as you said, incorporate into your marketing efforts. and sometimes it's even more behind the scenes in terms of hiring, in terms of changing your product, and how you're making it, how it's being packaged. Those are all things that aren't really part of marketing, but they're things that a corporation can do. Yet they
Right.
don't necessarily have to, the marketing part side of it be fun and light and not necessarily going there. I don't. So from what I'm
Yeah, like there's no,
right.
I don't think there's anything worse than a brand message that you can't authentically stand behind with a strategy you're executing, like steps you're tangibly taking within your company's strategy, whether that is um, making practices to be more sustainable for the future, or making sure you're creating like equitable workplace scenarios for everyone and developing and hiring leaders that embody that. Like you have to do that work first before you can speak about it as a marketing message.
I agree. Well, I want to lighten it up a bit now and ask you. I like to ask this because I think it says a lot about someone. If you could live in any time period, what era would it be?
What do you say to this? What did you pick?
What did I pick? You know what? I've gone back and forth with different ones. I mean, as far as like, I think the 70s is cool in terms of I love the clothes and it's fun. And, when you think about that kind of, just freedom, life, whatever. And it's also the beginning of starting out, I think, women and really being able to sort of push themselves to have other opportunities. Um, that is not discounting all the negativity and how far we've come, but those kind of things stand out for me. But I love, like, I watch those old movies, like the Gidget movies, and everyone's just like hanging out at the beach and and just like that lifestyle, just all having a good time. And
Huh?
again,
Uh-huh.
there's a lot more going on back then, but I just like there were certain things like that that resonate with me. But yeah, but I do go back and forth sometimes with different things. I've never gone like way, like some people will be like medieval time, or just like
Uh-huh.
really far back. Some women I've spoken with. But yeah, it's more those kinds of.
To go that far back, I was thinking about a time period when we did have like more equitable. I like what you were saying on the more equitable rights for women. It's like you've moved forward in that progression. And I also want to have some of these like technology luxuries um that I think we're all very accustomed to, whether that's things like indoor plumbing and air conditioning
Yeah, those are
and
nice.
transportation. But I was thinking this is probably like detrimental for my career, but like right before the internet really took over, it just seemed like a much simpler time and you weren't as like distracted by all of this immediate information at your fingertips. What do you think that time period would be? I was thinking like
I
the
guess
end of the
like late
millennium,
90s,
maybe.
90s.
Yeah. So I want to go to the 90s.
Yeah, no, I agree with the whole internet. I mean, obviously, there's parts of it that I love, and I mean, we wouldn't be doing this, So it's
I
definitely
probably wouldn't
there's
have a
certain
job, so
value, the value of it. But I also feel like I don't personally like to put my life. I don't post, hey, I'm having coffee, or hey, I'm doing this. Those who do, I think that's great for them. If that's what whatever's good for each person. But it's just I do find that sometimes personally I'd rather have this kind of I mean, obviously I'd rather even be in person more so, but I like that face to face. I like to see expressions. I like to see. I don't want to just throw things out into you know metaverse and see what happens.
yeah, that's certainly challenging. It's
So
just tougher for our children and what that
well,
future
and
looks
it
like.
just like you think. I know I had some bullying in high school, and not me bullying. I was bullied. And if there had been Facebook, it would have been so much more worse. I mean, it was hard enough, but never mind if it was put out there for so many more people to see. Um, so I think that there's much more of a struggle for younger kids that are now dealing with this kind of pressure.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's really scary the impact that can have when you're very young.
Yep. No, it is, and which is again, that's we're not here to solve but I do think that with mental health issues and people really taking more serious, and with children especially, with kids, and not just, I never would have thought to talk to my parents about any of that. They didn't know any of that was going on. They found out years later, so
Huh?
it's
Yeah.
just, that's
Oh,
something
I
that,
have so much ahead of me as a parent.
yes, I know. Not to, I think you're safe for a little bit with your daughter, but
Yes, we'll just stay in our little adorable bubble.
and where you're so
Cute.
digital savvy, that makes you even, you'll be able to be more a part of it. Not, she probably won't like that part, but you'll be able to be more aware.
Yeah, that's definitely true.
Yeah. Well, I want to ask you also, I mean, now you have a little girl and a promotion. What do you do when you want to just kind of retreat and have what's your obsession, or what your guilty pleasure is?
There's like very little time for this anymore, I think. Um, Obsession is probably her. I just am so wrapped up in her and how it's just amazing and feel like you're watching a miracle every day, the things they do and can and grow into. But outside of that,
That's a great obsession. I love that. That's awesome.
oh
Is there
yeah,
anybody
we're just obsessed.
is there any what?
I said, yeah, we're just obsessed. She's
No
obsessed.
food, no particular, like you got to have your chocolate, or
Oh,
watch stream a certain movie, TV show.
well, I'm still trying to get caught up on Ozark. I know the finale was probably like months ago, but the rate of which my husband and I actually watch TV together, it's very slow pace. So, um, finishing that, food, there's this awesome like homemade ice cream shop in my neighborhood that is definitely my go-to for an awesome sweet treat. Whether that's like all of their ice creams that are stuffed with filling, or they have amazing sundaes, whatever. That's a great treat.
Awesome. Well, I hope you get more chances to, then you'll get your daughter eating the ice cream and
Oh, she'll eat the ice cream, no doubt about
sounds
it.
good. So you just need to go pick up some ice cream for tonight, and
Uh-huh.
we can sit and watch Ozark with your daughter sitting in between.
Cannot watch Ozark with your daughter. It's very bad.
She's too young to know. But anyway,
That's a good plan though. I like where her head's at.
Maggie, thank you so much. This has been awesome. It's like I said, I love getting to know you outside of, all the strategies we talked. But so anyway, thank you. I really appreciate you joining me.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me. It's good to see you, Lisa.
It's great to see you. And thank you for watching. And as I say all the time, I'm always looking for another exceptional marketing woman who I would love to sort of find out more about them. So if you have anyone you want to suggest, please let me know and I will do my best. And thank you again. And thank you again, Maggie.